بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, as you know, today is Wednesday and we do Q&A sessions. As we always say every week, if you have any questions that you would like to submit, please send them to my email. My email address, mufti@islamstl.org. And inshallah, we will try to answer as many as we can on Wednesdays. Jazakallahu khairan. Question number one that we have today. The question is, I am a physician, and as you know, healthcare workers are on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, and they are required to wear protective gear. In order for me to see patients, the N95 masks must fit well, and with the beard, it does not fit well in certain areas. Is it okay to shave at this time so the masks fit well and so that we are protected properly? Now, this is a question that I have received from multiple physicians in the past few days because of this situation that is going on. Now, first off, before even answering the question, I wanted to personally give my gratitude and my special thanks to all of the physicians, nurses, and healthcare workers out there who are on the front lines of this pandemic. I know it's not an easy time for you, and obviously you are putting yourselves at risk with everything that is going on. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect each and every one of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect your families as well. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. So jazakallahu khairan to all of you for the hard work that you are doing during this time. Now, answering the question, let me first say that from an Islamic point of view, the ruling on the beard itself is that it is a wajib according to the ulama as well as the fuqaha, and there's consensus on this matter as well. So that being said, since the ruling on the beard itself is wajib and it is so strong in Islam, all other avenues, in order to reach a conclusion such as shaving, basically removing a wajib in a complete manner like that, first and foremost, all other avenues must be exhausted in order to reach that particular conclusion. So the first thing that one must do is request to those who they are able to request the hospital to provide the PAPR masks or the powered air purifying respirator masks if possible, or face shields or whatever else they can provide for protective gear during this particular time. And request it based on religious grounds that, I have this religious obligation, this religious duty, and I need this because of that. Now, if you are in a situation where, due to shortages in supply, that they are not able to provide such protection and protective gear, then see if other physicians in the same hospital are able to take those patients that you are unable to take because of high risk. See if they are able to take those who are not in that particular requirement. Now, if you are in a situation where they cannot find those supplies and no other doctors are available, and there are some physicians that I've spoken to who have said they work at rural hospitals, and in their cases that they're the only physician and there's no one else to cover behind them. So in that case, if there is no other gear available and if there are no other physicians to cover and you have to check on the patients because no one else can do it, then some of the other scholars who I've spoken to, there's a couple of people who are physicians themselves who are also ulama, and they say that in that case, do not shave mutlaqan, meaning do not shave in a complete way, but rather only trim in such a way or cut in such a way where the edges of the mask can fit and make contact with the skin. So it provides that protection and it's covered properly, no matter how silly looking it may appear. Yes, when you take the mask off, your beard may not be lined up properly, or may look odd, but at the end of the day, you are not still shaving mutlaqan. Now, and the reason why they're asking this is because some of the physicians have said that they cannot see the patients unless it is fit properly. So this is the reason why to go to that step, do that only if those other avenues are exhausted. Now, there is a principle in fiqh which is known as ad-darurat tabihul mahdhurat, which basically means that necessity legalizes prohibitions. But before using that legal maxim in usul al-fiqh, it is necessary that other avenues are exhausted. So my personal advice to you, physicians and healthcare workers out there, is that before taking any steps, we know that, subhanAllah, you have a good niyyah and you have a good intention at heart. So first and foremost, before anything, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we start using other avenues in the dunya, we should first ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help and His guidance and His advice, number one. And those who are sincere and have ikhlas, then after that, with sabr, go and ask and go and request these things. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the doors for you. So do that, have ikhlas, have sincerity, inshallah the doors will be open for you. And in these particular cases, as we know, in the times that we're in, we are in times of urgency where doctors and physicians are needed. So take all the steps that you can, and after all the avenues are exhausted, then go to the extreme step at the very end if nothing else avails. So that's number one. Question number two. Many of us nowadays read Quran from our phones or our iPads, our tablets. So do we need to be in a state of wudu for this? Now, let me first say before answering this question that if one is in a state of janaba or major impurity which requires ghusl, then in that case one cannot recite any Quran at all, whether it's reading from the mushaf, whether it's reading from your iPad or phone, whether it's even reciting from memory. One cannot recite Quran in those ways. The only thing they can recite are those verses of Quran or those chapters which are particularly used for du'as at times. For example, Surah Fatiha is used as a dua, or anything Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. Those verses that are typically used as du'as, one can recite those as a dhikr, as a form of dhikr, but not as the form of Quran itself. So that's number one. Number two, if one is in a state of impurity where wudu is required, then in that case they can recite Quran from memory, but they cannot read from the mushaf or anything like that. Now, if one is reading from the mushaf itself, the physical book, the physical Quran, then they must be in the state of wudu because of the fact that when they're touching the book itself and the pages of the book, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun," that none but the pure touch it, the mutahharun, meaning one has to be in the state of tahara in order to touch the Quran, in that state of wudu. So that is in a form of consensus from the scholars that if one is using the mushaf on its own. Now, if one is reading from the iPad or the iPhone, then many of the ulama, they say that when the verses themselves are visible and apparent on the screen, then those areas where the verses are, then it is in the hukm of the mushaf itself, meaning that if you're touching that particular area, you must be in the state of wudu. However, if you're touching any other part of the phone where the verses of Quran are not in appearance, then in that case, you don't have to be in the state of wudu to touch those particular areas. But from an adabi point and an adabi mindset, from an etiquette mindset, you can say the Quran, of course, is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One should make an utmost effort to be in the state of wudu, even when they are not touching the areas of the Quran or if they are reciting Quran from memory. So this is my advice from that particular standpoint. The third question for today is that in this time, there are many in need that are due to the pandemic. There are many people who are needy. So the person says that I am confused where to donate. Is it better to donate locally or to give abroad to those people who are needy in another country? So the answer to this is obviously from a principle standpoint, sadaqah and zakah. So sadaqah can be given to anyone and anywhere. And zakah itself can be given to a needy Muslim, a person who is needy that is Muslim, anywhere, whether it's locally or it is abroad. And it is still considered sadaqah or zakah. But my personal advice is that yes, one should also give some abroad to the causes. We know that there are so many causes out there and so many people who are suffering, and this is the responsibility of the global ummah to help those people. But one should put a large amount of focus on the needy that are in their local areas and in their local towns. And when one does this, it fulfills the need locally where others outside the area will not put any focus on. You're not going to expect people in Australia to say that we're going to donate to the needy people of St. Louis, the needy Muslims, or the needy people of St. Louis, Missouri. but rather you might hear people in Australia saying, okay, we're going to donate to the refugees who are in the camps, or the people who are suffering in this country or that country, because it's a more of a global situation, you can say. But when it comes to St. Louis, Missouri, then most likely it's going to be the Muslims of St. Louis, Missouri, who are going to step up and help them locally. So as you know, this is something which also locally it increases the bonds of brotherhood and the bonds of unity and love within the Muslim community, and that has a great impact from a local mindset. Alhamdulillah, as you know, we have social services, and the Department of Social Services is extremely busy at this time. We have posted on our Facebook page earlier today regarding some of the things that they are doing during this pandemic, and how the demands have increased by the people. So this is why we are highly encouraging people to give their sadaqah and to give zakah. Start giving zakah early so that we can help these people who are in need. So Jazakallah khairan to all our Baitul Mal workers, all our social service workers, and all those who are volunteering their time in any way, whether it's our organization or other organizations. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for all the efforts that you are doing to help people during this time. Okay, the fourth question today is that there's a famous dua which I read once that was recited before Ramadan. So what is the dua and what is the status of it? So now the person did not mention this dua itself in the question, but I kind of figured that this may be the dua. And there's a dua that's mentioned in a hadith narrated by Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu ta'ala an. He reports that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he used to teach the Sahaba radiallahu majma'in the following dua when the blessed month of Ramadan would arrive. What is this dua? It is Allahumma sallimni li Ramadan wa sallim Ramadan li wa sallimhu li mutaqabbala. So this means that, oh Allah, preserve for me Ramadan and safeguard Ramadan for me and accept it from me. Now, this is a hadith which comes in Tabrani. Imam Tabrani, he narrates this hadith, as well as it's in another book of hadith which is entitled Kanzul Ummal. The status of this hadith itself, according to the muhaddithin, is that the chain of narrators is weak. Yani it is considered da'if when it comes to the hadith in itself, and there are slight variations as well in the wording of this dua. However, the ulama do say that it is positively supported by the practice of the salaf, of the pious predecessors who would recite this dua. There are multiple narrations of various pious predecessors reciting this dua. Therefore, it is suitable for practice. And regardless of that, the ulama and the muhaddithin say that any hadith, even if it's da'if in nature, that has to do with fadl or virtue, or has to do with du'as or anything like that, it is suitable for practice on its own. And this dua, as we see, has a beautiful meaning and a good meaning, so there's no doubt that we can recite this dua in itself. There's a version of this dua of Yahya ibn Abi Kathir, rahmatullah alayh, and the words that he adds in this dua are Allahumma sallimni ila Ramadan, oh Allah, keep me safe till Ramadan. So some say that dua was recited at the commencement of Ramadan, when Ramadan itself began. Some say with the addition of those particular words, oh Allah, keep me safe till Ramadan, that this dua in itself can be recited, of course, in the month of Sha'aban, before the approach of Ramadan itself. So that is another thing to mention with regards to this particular dua. But the dua itself is a beautiful dua, and it has great meaning on its own. So there's no harm in reciting it, especially in this month of Sha'aban that we are in right now. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us all safely to the month of Ramadan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us together in the month of Ramadan as well. Ameen. The fifth question that we have today, somebody said that I saw somebody on Facebook the other day referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as she. I felt this is completely wrong, but I was wondering, why do we refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as he when we speak of him subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now, first of all, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from having such types of thoughts. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. But the basic answer to this question, why do we refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as he, is that in Arabic, we know that the pronoun for he is huwa, and the pronoun for she is hiya. Anyone who knows the very basics of Arabic will know those particular pronouns. And in the Quran itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he refers to himself with the pronoun huwa. For example, in Surah Hashr, the famous verses, huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illa hu, alimul ghaybi wa shahada, huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. So right there you can hear 3 times, huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illa hu, that he is Allah. Alladhi la ilaha illahu, there is no deity worthy of worship except he. Then alimul ghaybi wa shahada, huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. Again, huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim, that he is ar-Rahman, he is ar-Rahim. So we can see 3 times the word huwa is used over here. That's one example that's over there. Another example that we can state at the very end of Surah Tawbah, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَقُلْ حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَهُوَ رَبُّ الْعَرْشِ الْعَظِيمِ. So again, the word huwa is used, لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ. So this is why we use the word he from an English standpoint, is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to himself with the pronoun huwa. That being said, when we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do not think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way that we think of human beings. He, she, male, female. We don't think of it in that particular way like that. Yes, we say he because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the pronoun huwa. But when we talk about ourselves as he or she, we talk about male versus female. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is much greater than that. We do not think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that we think of other human beings. We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how? Through his asma'ul husna, through his beautiful names and through his beautiful attributes as mentioned in the Quran. So we cannot comprehend the grand appearance of the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. This is why the ultimate ihsan that is given to the believers in Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ in the Quran. That is there any reward or recompense for ihsan rather than ihsan itself? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward a person who engages in ihsan, or doing things with utmost excellence in this world, pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the greatest of ihsans. And the greatest of ihsans that is known to us in Jannah, it's not Jannah itself is an ihsan, but the ultimate ihsan within Jannah itself is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reveal himself and the believer will get to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with utmost clarity. So that is something that we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we are able to also be in a position of to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Ameen. Okay, question number 6. We have just a couple of more questions quickly left, inshallah. If after tashahhud, and he's saying at-tahiyat in the sitting position in salah, if one is supposed to stand for the third rak'ah but keeps on reciting, and they keep on reciting salawat upon Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then what to do? So the answer to this is that in a 3 or 4 rak'ah of salah, one should stand up for the third rak'ah immediately after completing the tashahhud. So after they say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, then they should immediately stand up for the third rak'ah. Now this ruling is with regards to the farad salah, the wajib salah, for example the witr, as well as the sunan mu'akkadas, for example the 4 rak'ah of salah before dhuhr. Now if a person delayed in standing up for the third rak'ah and they ended up reading up to Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, so up to that portion or later on, then in that case it is considered as being a delay in doing the next rukn of salah. Therefore, in the last sitting they will have to do sajdat as-sahu, and then that will make up for that deficiency. However, if they did less than Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, if they did less than that portion and then they stood up for the third rak'ah, then that will not be considered a deficiency, and sajda sahu will not be necessary. Now, if they continue doing this in a sunan ghayr mu'akkada salah, or in any salah which is a nafil, then in that case there is no sajda sahu that is necessary for that. In fact, some of the ulama say that it is even recommended that in those particular types of prayers one can do salawat upon Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well as a dua, and then stand up for the third rak'ah in a salah that is sunan ghayr mu'akkada, or a salah which is nafil. So that is the answer to that question. The final question that is there, and I kind of mentioned this a couple of weeks ago or maybe the time before that, we know that subhanAllah, a lot of people are now establishing jama'ah with their families, salah and congregation, which is one of the silver linings to this time that we are in right now. So what is the way to stand in jama'ah? I think when I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, I had only mentioned about the husband and the wife, but what about the other situations that are there? So there's a few scenarios that are here that we can say. First of all, if it's 2 males, if it's an imam and 1 male follower, then the imam would stand, and then the male follower would be on the right side of the imam, but slightly behind. So that's one scenario. The second scenario, if there are more than 2 males, so there's 1 imam and then there are 2 male followers or more than 2 male followers. So in that case, the imam would stand in front and the 2 male followers or more would stand in a row behind the imam. Not on the right side, but in a row behind the imam, as we do in the masjid. The third scenario, 1 male and 1 female. For example, if it's a husband and a wife, or if it's the imam and the imam's daughter, for example, whatever it may be, 1 male, 1 female, then in that case, the husband is in front, and then the wife or the female would be not on the right side as it would be with one male, but she would be behind, just as it would be if there were multiple male followers. So she would be right behind the imam in a row on her own. The next scenario would be an imam, one male follower, and one female follower, or more than one female followers. In that case, it would be the imam and the one male follower on the right side slightly behind, and then the female follower, whether it's one solo or if it's more than one female follower, they would have their own row behind those two. And then the last scenario I'll say is an imam, multiple males, and one or more females. So in that case, it would be the imam, and then the multiple males would be standing in a row right behind the imam, and then a third row behind them would be the one female or more than one female. Now, there were some charts that people did send to make this easy, make it a little more visual for you. Inshallah, we will post that, or if I'm unable to post on this Facebook account, then we will send through email or whatever it may be. So inshallah, it would be a lot easier for you to look at that. So that concludes the questions for today. Once again, as we said in the beginning, if you have any questions that you would like answered, please send them to my email address, mufti@islamstl.org, and we will inshallah answer as many as we can on Wednesday nights. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you and reward all of you. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.